Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever considered retiring abroad? Retiring overseas? Retiring not in the United States of America, right? Today we're talking about some of the things to watch out for. 5 things that you need to know before you consider this. Before you pull the plug and go retire outside of America, what you have to know. Now, a number of these tips are actually going to apply also if you just move in retirement, right? Many people, let's say they live in the DC area as federal employees or wherever, and hey, I want to move to Florida, or I want to move to Texas, or I want to move to New York, whatever, right? Many people make a big move once they retire, and there's a few things you need to know. So we're going to dive right in. Again, all of these are going to apply for you if you're leaving the States to retire, but then, of course, a handful of them are going to apply to you if you're moving or planning to move at all, even within the United States. Okay, so again, if you're new here, my name is Dallin Hawes, a financial planner serving you guys as federal employees, and I absolutely love helping you guys maximize your benefits, retire confident, comfortable, all that good stuff. So let's dive right in. Tip number 1, and this is do not buy a home right away. Don't do it. Don't do it unless, I'll give one exception. The only time when I'm working with a client one-on-one on an ongoing basis, they say, hey, I want to retire to Florida and I want to buy a home before I retire there so I'm set up, ready to go. I'm always pretty cautious. And let me tell you why. Because retirement and living somewhere, as many of you know, is very different than vacationing somewhere, right? Many times people vacation to a spot, they absolutely love it. They say, wow, what would it be like to retire here? That would be amazing. But again, living somewhere is not the same thing as vacationing there. So what I always recommend whenever, sometimes it doesn't make sense, but the vast majority of times it does, is if they have not actually spent a significant period of time at that location, I say, hey, don't be in a hurry to buy, right? You don't know exactly where you want to be. Go ahead and rent. Rent a place in the place you think you're going to want to be, and do you like it, right? Maybe it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 months to say, okay, let's make sure I want to be in this spot before I buy a home, buy a condo, whatever it is. Give yourself the flexibility, because once you buy, there's a lot of expenses that come with owning property, whether it's the closing costs of buying, there's lots of things that come with it. And I'd much rather have time for you to actually live there, experience what it's like, not on vacation there, but actually living day to day, so you can make a good decision. So that applies to you whether you're moving to Florida or to Colombia, right? So that you can really have firsthand experience of what it's like to live in that location. It's huge. Number 2, this is more on the practical side, right? And that is health insurance, right? You as federal employees are very fortunate, right? You have the Foreign Service Benefit Plan, which covers people outside the United States, which is a huge, huge benefit. It's one of your FEHB options. You can certainly use that. But what is the national health care program in the country you're going to? Many countries have a national health care program. What does that look like? What does that cost? Is that something you want to be involved in? You have to understand that. Now, one major consideration that a lot of people overlook is Medicare, right? Let me tell you why. Most people overlook it because Medicare does not cover you outside the United States, okay? So most people that are planning to retire abroad say, I'm not going to get Medicare because I'm going to be outside the United States. Well, that's fine, but are you ever planning to come back? Ever, right? Maybe you get into your 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever. You say, I want to be back, closer to friends, closer to family. And if that's the case, are you going to want Medicare then? And the reason I bring this up is because I've talked about this many times on the channel, but Medicare Part B is going to be a big deal for most federal employees turning 65 and up, right? And if you don't get on Medicare Part B right when you turn 65 or right when you retire, there's a penalty if you ever jump on it later. So you have to have a plan of, okay, how long am I realistically want to be overseas? And is there a chance I'm going to want to be back? Do I want to move back for my kids, friends, whatever, right? You have to have a plan for health insurance to make sure you're covered in every stage of retirement, not just the beginning, not just for how you're feeling right now, not just for your health right now, but just in case anything happens. You got to have a plan. You don't want to pin yourself into a corner. Number 3, and this is just one thing to consider, okay? Is the place you're going really cheaper? Now, some people don't go retire to a place because it's cheaper. Some people go to a more expensive place, right, where the cost of living is higher. And it's totally fine as long as your numbers work. But many people make retirement decisions based on where it is cheaper to live, right? We're saying, okay, I don't want to pay income taxes. I'm going to move to a state with no income tax. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. But often they fail to recognize all the expenses that come with a certain location, right? For example, let's say you retire to South America, where the cost of living in some areas are significantly less than it is in the United States. Well, do you factor in, okay, how often are you going to want to fly back to see your kids? How often are you going to want to fly back to be with friends, right? Probably more often than you'd expect, right? Depending on your lifestyle and where your connections and friends and people are, right? You have to factor that in, right? What is the cost of that? You have to factor all the variables of wherever you're living, right? Maybe you move to a lower cost state, but where do your kids live, right? There's been tons of studies on happiness surveys when it comes to retirees, and one of the biggest factors is being close to kids, right? Is that a factor for you? Is that a factor for you? Definitely consider everything when it comes to, okay, is it really cheaper? And again, as long as your numbers work, I don't care how much it costs. If you want to be there, great, right? It doesn't have to be cheaper to retire there. Just don't go in with the assumption of, hey, wow, my pension's going to go twice as far here, when maybe there's some hidden or not so obvious expenses that come with living in that spot, right? Okay. Number four is taxes. And the fact that you cannot escape, Uncle Sam. You cannot escape. So the U.S. is unique. They will tax you and your income as long as you're a U.S. citizen, no matter where you live, right? No matter where you live. So the taxes you're going to owe on your TSP, your pension, Social Security, all are still going to be applicable. You can't escape, okay? So there's no strategies to avoid them. I mean, I'm not an international lawyer when it comes to taxes. That's not what I do, right? If you have, some big money, maybe talk to someone about that. But that's not my deal, right? But as a general rule, you really can't escape taxes no matter where you live. You have to pay your U.S. taxes, okay? That's huge. So I'm not going to talk too much on that, but that is just something you have to know, is you can't escape and plan on paying your full taxes. Number 5, and I've touched on this point a little bit in a previous point, is basically this, is wherever you're retiring, where you want to be in every stage of your retirement, right? So I know it's impossible to know what the future is going to look like. It's impossible to know what your future health is going to look like, what your future situation, what the economy is going to look like. It's impossible to know. However, that is why it is so crucial to give yourself options in retirement, right? To give yourself flexibility to make different decisions later, okay? So that is why when you are making decisions like buying property, like moving somewhere, like spending a bunch of money on anything in retirement, or picking, let's say, even the traditional TSP versus Roth TSP, you have to build into your future decisions the flexibility to say, hey, I want the flexibility to do what makes sense at that time, right? And for example, if you retire, you say, wow, I can't afford to retire right now and stay in the same location. I'm going to move down to Mexico. I'm going to move down to a lower cost of living place and retire. It's going to be great. Well, that's amazing. I love it. I love the creativity. And if that's what you want, awesome, go for it. But are you ever want to come back to the States? Are you ever going to want to come back to a higher cost of living area and maybe you don't have the funds to do that? Don't paint yourself into a corner, right? I'm not saying you can't retire early. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying, okay, have a plan for every stage of your life. Every stage. Think through it. Think through the details as much as you can. I know it's impossible to know everything. Just don't make any huge decisions that is going to affect your ability to make more flexible decisions down the road. That is huge, huge. Regardless of where you're planning to move or wherever, give yourself options in the future. So I hope that was helpful. Now, If you're new here, there's tons of links in the description below that will help you retire confident. I'm giving away my free book on the TSP, giving away the TSP Cheat Sheet. There's tons of links down below that will help you retire confident. So I hope this is helpful. If you are planning to retire abroad, please put in the comments below. Share where you're going and why. I'd love to hear it. And good luck with everything. Congrats on retirement if it's coming up close for you. And I'll see you next time.